top of your screen, do you see a little thing that says uploading?
I do.
Okay. So at the very end, before we get off, you're going to want to wait like 5 to 10 seconds before you actually hang up. And it'll say uploading 100%. It
Cool.
literally takes like 5 or 10 seconds. But if you get off the call too soon, or if I accidentally hang up, we can get it back. This is so bizarre that I'm not doing this like with someone. So sorry. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been wanting to do a trip reports type thing for a while. Um, we are like so booked with guests that it's hard to nail down both of us at the same time for like trip reports because we both are off on like Mondays and Wednesdays, and that's the only day we get. So we were like, let's do trip reports, and then we don't need two people. We can like you do it in your free time, I'll do it in my free time. Like that way when we're working with someone else's schedule, it's literally just like my schedule and theirs, not three people trying to come together.
Makes complete sense.
Okay. And I also feel like we get a little feedback from both. They're like we have these professionals and psychiatrists and all these people on, but people relate more to people
For sure.
who aren't like big in this space in like the science part of it. Like it's a little overwhelming for them to hear. So I was like, we need to do this as like segments so people can have something to refer to, and we can do like little like subjects, like whatever it is that you took, like have that as like a drop down. Like if you want to hear people about psilocybin, here you go. If you want to hear LSD trips, here you go. So
That makes complete sense.
you're
I
first.
actually list like so I've listened to almost all of your podcasts now. There's like a few that I haven't just towards the end. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had started listening to them on and off, and then it was like, if you're going to be on this, like, you need to listen to all of them just so you get a basis, like, and so I'm
Yeah.
almost done listening to them. I did skip forward a couple to hear your one about ayahuasca. Um, but I really agree with you. I related a lot more and enjoyed listening to a lot more the ones where it was people like talking about what they've been through, talking about sitting with psychedelics, talking about all of that, because it does give a much more personal view as opposed to like, here is the science and this
Right.
chemical and that chemical and this is why this happens. It's like all that's great, but what's actually like emotionally happening and mentally happening and physically happening and spiritually happening, and like science can't explain that.
Literally. And I think sometimes what I have like found in this space is unless you're already in it, those conversations can be very overwhelming.
Oh yeah, I completely, people are very weirded out by me. Like I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like I've been doing psychedelics since I was 18 years old. Like I'll be 35 in June. Like we're looking at what, 17 years almost
Oh shit.
of like psychedelics now. And I mean, not all of them were done for healing purposes. A
Right.
big chunk of the ones in the beginning were just like going to music festivals and being like, I'm going to eat some acid, and then I'm going to eat some mushrooms, and then I'm going to do some Molly, and then I'm going to do some blow, and then I'm going to see where that night takes me and wonder why I'm emotionally crashing, for 4 weeks after that or whatever.
I think I literally just said this to someone the other day. We had our first troll on TikTok, and it was like, for as long as we've been doing this, I was pretty shocked that this was the first one. Like I was expecting it to happen eventually, but she was just like, I do mushrooms all the time and this isn't what it is. And I'm like, okay, there's a huge difference in people doing mushrooms all the time to get fucked up and people doing them with like an intention and
Oh, for
purpose and
sure.
healing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, you might do them all the time. You might be right, but that's probably why you're still on antidepressants and you're mad that we're talking about antidepressants. Like,
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason there is that burnt out like hippie stereotype, unfortunately. Like if these things aren't meant for all of the time. They're just plain not. Like, and anybody who's like, "Oh my god, no, like I do them all the time and like over and over again and it's so great." But you look at their life and I'm like, "But do you see where you're struggling and where you're like not taking the
right.
teaching the learnings, and then I'm like, you know what? That's also not mine. So cool, man.
I know, but
But
it's so hard.
it
You're like,
really is. Like, there's a good friend of my partner's who's like that, and I just want to be like, bro, like, you are so tapped into this psychedelic world, but like, you are so far removed from the teachings it can give you because you're so resistant to it all. And then I'm like, I literally have had to stop myself and just like step back completely from it and be like, you know what? You do you.
I have that shirt. I don't drink, just drugs.
Yeah.
I literally have that same t-shirt.
I love it.
I
I love
almost
it.
wore it under my sweatshirt today, but I was like, it's cold in the basement, so I'm just gonna wear a sweatshirt. She's not gonna see it. But I swear to God, I can't wait to break that out. Okay, I'm like, we already have like so much content. We haven't even fucking This is perfect. Okay. Also, I'm going to say this again before we get started. What's interesting is like when I first met you, I hadn't even done my first journey yet.
I know. I was actually thinking about that as I was listening to your podcast when you were talking about your first journey. And I was like, oh man, you actually met her. Because I met you right around the time I came back from Costa Rica.
Oh, shit.
So I had just come back from sitting with ayahuasca for the first time and had met you. And I remember you were like, wait, you did what? And you went where and what? And I was like, yeah, I'm not ready to talk about that yet. And for a really long time, I wasn't ready to talk about it with other people. It's only been till recently that I'm like, maybe you should start letting people see where these journeys have taken you, because it's been a long ways. But it was really interesting to like hear your progression through the podcast too, from like the person I met in that loft to like now.
The girl who was like, you did what?
Yeah.
And I was like so terrified. I remember like being like, what if something comes out? And Ashley being like, what would come out that you're afraid of coming out? I'm like, there's so much. I don't know. There's so much that could possibly come out. Like, I don't know.
Right.
But
I
yeah,
have no idea.
right. I'm like, what if you judge me? Which is funny now. Um, okay, so shit. Ah, okay, we have like a pre-recorded um intro now, so I don't have to do that. Let me make sure. Okay, everything's going. All right, are you ready?
I am ready.
Do we have to say like? I mean, I can say I know you, but I don't think we'll get there if we get there. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
we
are you
can.
still okay with talking about like the food and the journey stuff?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Like, that is a path that I'm still working on and building and whatnot, but I would love to be able to put that out there because it's really hard to find a way to put that out to a
No, this is
community.
perfect. I
So,
kind of want to
like,
say that's how I know you, and that's why I was asking if it was okay to
that's
tag
perfect.
you.
I would love and appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Whew. Deep breath. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Welcome to Trip Reports with See You on the Other Side. I am your co-host Leah, and I'm doing this solo, and this is a first. So you guys are gonna have to forgive me if I fumble, because Christine is usually the one who like brings me back to the itinerary. But today I'm here with Sam. Can
Perfect.
you let our listeners know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. My name is Samantha, and or Sam is totally fine. I respond to either. Um, I what I do.
Oh yeah, that's a hard one.
I know. I'm like immediately I want to go to that like American standard of like my job is, but like what I do is live life to like my best ability.
That's probably the
Um,
best answer I've heard so
yeah,
far. I
like
fucking love that.
I have learned through your show and your suggestion of books that I am an empath. So that's another thing that I very, very much am. Um, and I am a personal chef and caterer and worker in the hospitality industry for quite a while now.
Okay, I'm gonna give a little. I know we just did this, but I'm gonna do a little brief introduction of how I know you, because I met you right before my first journey. Like literally, I think it was like maybe a few weeks after. Um, and just being like such a baby in the whole psychedelic space, and then hearing you tell me you've been doing it since you were like 17, 18 years old, or however, 17 years, I can't remember what you said,
Yeah,
but
I
I
was
was like,
18, so it's been About 17 years now.
Jesus Christ. So I was like in the presence of like a like a
Oh God, no,
major.
I still feel like a baby in this realm. Like, please know that. I like definitely still feel like a baby in this realm very often.
It's a big it's a big umbrella
It
to be
is.
under. But I also after that journey, you prepared the food for me.
I did and loved it.
It was like the best food I've ever had in my entire life. Like, and I don't know if that was because I was on shrooms coming down or because it was you, but I will say I have used you several times since then to prepare for other journeys, which has been so I'm like, it wasn't just the shrooms because I help other people and the food is more for them. But I'm sitting there like, are you hungry yet? Because I'm gonna chow down on this charcuterie board that I got for you, but like you're sitting there drooling.
Yeah.
so so thank you for that service. And if you want to plug that a little bit, tell people what that is and how that works for you.
Yeah, of course. So I guess another thing when could roll back into that question you just asked me of like what I am or what I do. I like to identify as what I call a kitchen witch. There's like all
Oh,
these different levels of magic, right? And my magic comes from the kitchen. Like it's what I do, it's what I love, it's who I am, it's how I create, it encompasses me as an individual. Like, so I show my heart, I show my love, I show my joy, all of that through preparing things for people. And so when it comes to the journeys, I work with different facilitators of, whatever psychedelic and or things people are doing. Even I do like women's circles and things like that, so it doesn't have to be psychedelic related, but I really love working in this like spiritual realm of people who are working on their healing. And I do charcuterie boards or lunches, or currently I'm moving my business into like weekly meal prep for people who have what are called CSAs, because I'm a huge proponent of like being local and, using farms from like around here and whatnot. So that's kind of encompasses what I do. I absolutely love it. Like it makes me the happiest. The thing about like the charcuterie boards and things that I do, I'm not just going to the store and like getting a jar of pickled this or that. Like I'm pickling those things. I'm taking goat cheese and rolling it in different herbs that I think are going to be great for you to come back to. I'm making the crackers. I'm doing all of that because like that is the love you need to come back to and the nourishment that you need to come back to after these things. Food is also a medicine, like along with
100%.
all of these other things, drumming and psychedelics and yoga and meditation. All of these things are medicines for us. And I think one that we forgot is that like food is one, because it's often used as just like a fuel or a diet plan and that's not what it's about. Like your body needs nourishment in all of these different ways.
No, you can feel the love in your food. And I remember I think Christina's used you too. Like, so for anybody who's local to Louisville, here's Sam, meet Sam. But what I love is like I can reach out to you and say, hey, we're doing acid in a tree house this weekend. So the food needs to be something that we can keep in a cooler. And this is what we're doing. And this is how many girls there's going to be with us. And you like the intention behind it. You're like, all right, done. Here we go. This is like food that's going to be good while you're on acid.
Yeah.
and, and then like the coming down from a mushroom trip, like it's like nourishing. But I also, for a friend that I guided, remember texting you afterwards and was like, what was that purple stuff
Yeah.
that was in that jar? You told me toe jam, and I've been like obsessed with toe jam ever since.
I know. I felt so weird telling you that too. I was like, how do I explain this? Because it's called like toe jam, but it's
Yeah,
so good. It's
it's
so
so
good and it's so nourishing. And like that's kind of what it's all about. I spent some time in Costa Rica twice now. I've been there in the last 4 years. I've been there twice and spent about 2.5 months there each time. And both times that I've went, I've spent time with the same facilitator. but her focus is really on the food as well. And I have like a stereotypical culinary school background. It's what I went to school for, it's what I did. I worked in restaurants for years. But working with this intuitive chef and learning really about like the dieta of the different plant medicine diets and the vegan and vegetarian background and gluten-free things and all of that, on top of like my old past of like doing festival work where I worked backstage at music festivals and had to do things like, we have this, and you have to make all of this glamorous food, but you have like a flat top and a fryer, and it's all off of a 20 tank, like
Oh
20-pound
shit.
propane tank, and one spatula. Go. You know, like
Oh my god.
it's all kind of culminated into this. You know, I was cooking in the middle of the jungle where it was like, here's what you got, figure out how to make it work, figure out how to make it taste good, because there's no like run into the local grocery store because you forgot this or that. So it all definitely has like, you know, come together in my little cauldron of life to like build up to who this is and what I do business wise.
A kitchen witch. I fucking love it. That
Yeah,
could
like through
literally
and
be like
through.
a TV show. How to cook in the wild for plant medicine. Okay, so now let's kind of get into like the psychedelic space. I know that you said you started doing this when you were 18, but give me a little bit of a background as to what got you into psychedelics in the first place and how you were doing them, because that's what you were saying earlier. And I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the first time I stepped into the psychedelic world, my gosh, that was literally the night before I was driving to move down here to Kentucky. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I graduated high school. It was the night before I was supposed to leave all of my high school friends. And it was like, so, and the first thing that I ever started out with was Molly. And it was like, hey, like let's do this, like it's your goodbye party. So that's what we decided to do. Probably not the smartest thing, having a 6-hour drive the next morning.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like emotional, like leaving all of my best friends from high school and like driving down to Kentucky. Like my parents were in their van in front of me with like all of my belongings, and I had my little, you know, little sedan, and I'm just like bawling. And like, mind you, it's August, but I don't realize my heat is on, so I'm like overheating. And
Oh my
it
God.
was, yeah, it was a it was a whole disaster, but I had a wonderful time doing it. And so that was my like introduction into it. And then I definitely didn't do it in any sort of ceremonial way. It was not a thing. That was not it. Like the ceremonial part of psychedelics and the healing part of psychedelics didn't even come into my world for another 10 years. Throughout all that, however, it was all about the fun. Like it was all about the party. It was all about the like, you know, go for it. So Molly was the first thing I stepped into for a while. And then I remember taking a trip back home to visit some friends who had moved out to like the middle of nowhere country. And my friend was like, yo, I got some acid, and I had never tried it before, but like wanted to, but was like still kind of scared, and loved it. So I'm in the middle of the country on a horse farm watching the snowfall
Oh
in
shit.
like northeastern Ohio. We were sitting out on the patio, like shaking, like chain smoking cigarettes, my best friend and I, just like talking about life in the world. And his girlfriend, also like more like a sister than a best friend, is like, you guys need to come inside now because you don't need hypothermia. Like, let's
Oh,
go, you know? So,
like,
like,
but life
again,
is so beautiful right now.
yeah, like snow, like the snowflakes are the size of our head. And she's like, they're really not. I'm not trying to burst your bubble, but you know, so again, it was just a party thing. Um, I worked at a bar then when it's no longer around. I won't drop any names in case anybody hears, but like it was definitely known for its party scene. And the owner offered me a chocolate, right? One night. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And so she puts them in the walk in. I don't know that these chocolates contain mushrooms, mind you. So my first
Oh,
mushroom trip, I didn't even know I was doing mushrooms.
oh shit.
Yeah. Like, first time ever, I'm like, I'm gonna go eat my chocolate. So I get it out of this bag that's in the walk-in and I eat this chocolate and I'm standing back in the kitchen and I'm like starting to sweat and I'm starting to not feel good and like things aren't feeling right. And as I know now, when that feeling comes on, I'm like, cool, ride this wave and you're gonna go and eat. But like, I'm like, my heart's racing and I'm looking around and I feel like I'm about to like Hulk out of my body. I go into the bathroom, I look in the mirror, all of my freckles, and I don't know if you can see them, but I am a very freckly person. All of my freckles are like morphing into animals in the mirror, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, I'm like freaking out. So finally, I say something to him, and I'm like, I think something's wrong. I don't know what's going on. And she just looked at me and she was like, did you eat your chocolate already? And I was like, well, yeah, like, what do
It's
you
chocolate.
mean? Yeah, it's chocolate. I'm like, you can't like offer a fat kid chocolate and her not be like, yes, please, you know?
No.
Like,
Thank God you like only ate one.
yeah, I know, right? She looked at me and said, okay, clock out. I'm going to pay you for the rest of the day, anyways. I don't know how to tell you this. Please don't be mad. And I'm like,
Um,
okay, like, you got to tell me what's going on. Like, you're really starting to worry me now. And she's like, you're on mushrooms. And immediately I was like, oh, phew, okay. And she was like, so you're not mad? And I was like, no, it explains everything. And then the rest of the night, like, partied, had fun, did my thing. Like, but I'll never forget that because people always ask me, especially now when I've stepped more into the ceremonial aspect, like, and not so much the like fun aspect. They're like, well, what was your first experience like? I'm like, it's not at all what you think. Like, it's not at all like I wasn't like in a circle. I didn't have a facilitator. Like, I didn't even know I was doing them. Yeah.
That's what I think is and I said this earlier, like there needs to be another name for like there's the psychonauts and I consider myself one now because once I started down that rabbit hole, I'm like, I want to try them all. Give me all of them. Like I want to know what each one feels like and what each one does. But then there's also like the healing part of it
Yeah.
that there I know several people who do shrooms all the time on a regular basis, but not 5 grams for healing in an intentional way, in a ceremonial way with a guide. It's just like, no, they trip balls all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference. So I feel like there needs to be a name for that. But how did you step into the healing part of psychedelics?
So that kind of happened. I had a friend at the time who was like also transitioning more into the healing aspect of things. And the first one that I would say was like a ceremonial, but really wasn't ceremonial. Like, we didn't really know we were stepping into this in a ceremonial way, but it's the one that like really opened my eyes to the fact that like things needed to change and end up turning into it. And I had my first, you know, actual like ego death. Like, not only that, I remember we were on some property, my hammock was hung, we're in like middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And I just literally remember looking at her and being like, tell my dad and my cat that I love them. I'm dying. Like, I'm dying right now.
Oh,
And
shit.
literally was under the impression that I was that was it. Like, that was it for this realm. I was done for. And prior to this, again, all of it was partying. I mean, I used to like double down on things at music festivals and be like, I'm going to take this and then I'm going to take this and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. And like, I remember eating mushrooms like chips out of a bag, you know? And like, it was always just for this like headspace experience and to watch the lights and to dance and to keep awake and all of this. And this one wasn't like that. Like, it was outside, it was in nature, it was I don't remember how much that one was. But that's the one that actually like made me perk up and look and go, whew, maybe you need to look about how you're living your life, because what you're doing right now is not really making sense and it's not really working. And like, it happened to be right before, so I spent some time living on a farm in South Texas. I spent about 4 months there, and that was after ending my time working in the music festival scene. I used to do backstage catering for it. And it was so much like there are people around 24/7. My days were like 20-hour days. I was running like 20 miles in a day, like moving around constantly. It was just go, 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 go. And like my body and my spirit, I've learned to listen to it when it says like you got to get away from people, you need time for yourself, take it. I have learned to listen to that, and so I went and worked on an organic farm, fruit, vegetable, chicken farm in South Texas. And this mushroom journey happened right prior to that, and it just like clicked all of these things in my head of like, this is what's right, this is what you need to do, like go do this for a while. And that's the thing that stopped me from drinking. So I had a pretty severe drinking problem, and a pretty severe cocaine problem for a while. And I definitely attribute mushrooms to the end of that.
Wow.
Ayahuasca really showed me that it was the end of drinking. But that first space, that first journey was what showed me like you have to change things. I actually saw myself getting into a car accident if I didn't change things. And that
Oh,
like, yeah, like, mushrooms. So
I'm getting
I
chills.
yeah, like I tell people, and it's difficult, especially if they've not been in the psychedelic world, but I call it the Realmadex, right? So when
Oh,
I get into my psychedelic space as an individual, it's like I can flip through my little Realmadex and it shows me like all the timelines, like all these timelines come up and it's just like an old school Rolodex,
oh
right?
shit.
And it like flipped open to that one where it was like, this is a potential of what could happen if you don't change your life.
Holy shit.
And it was like, okay, well, we'll start to change our life now.
I hear you. I hear
Yeah,
you.
like
So,
listening.
did you like, did you think that that was like you were walking into a fun journey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
just like even the set and the setting, because it was so different and so quiet and in nature, like you had just a completely different experience,
Yep.
which, I want to plug this a little bit because we talk about this a lot on our podcast, but like set and setting are so crucial
Very
and
important.
so important. And that is why, if you're doing probably the amount that you did in a group setting or at a few music festival, you're going to have a very different experience
Oh, yeah.
than what you would if it's quiet and serene.
And you're by yourself and or with, like I don't want to say by yourself because if I was completely by myself, I probably would have completely freaked out. Like having that person there to ground me and be like, you're not dying, your ego is. Like, and eventually that person did look at me and finally say like, okay, I'll bite. Parts of you, they're dying right now. You as a whole, you as a person, you as a human are not, but parts of you are. And you can either choose to continue to hold on to them and fight this, or you can let them go and like get to the other side of this.
So was it were you fighting it a little bit?
Oh, yeah, because
Okay.
I never had that experience before. And I was like, you're literally telling me to be okay with dying. Like, you're
Right.
literally telling me right now to be okay with dying. And eventually, like, once I had calmed down a little bit, my facilitator wandered away and I sat there and I was completely by myself. And I mean, they were in earshot, like I could not see them anywhere. But I just remember looking around and finally being like, okay, but if you are dead, like heaven is trees and a hammock and a pond and like
You're like, this is pretty fucking
I
awesome.
guess dead's yeah, like I guess this if this is where I end up staying and nobody comes around, like okay. And then from there, like all of that feeling of like tension and holding on, like it released and it was able to like flow into what needed to come next.
That's usually what I see, like, when I'm sitting with people, like they're fighting it is what makes it uncomfortable.
Yeah. But isn't
And
that with everything in life though? It's fighting anything, whether you're
literally,
on psychedelics or not. Like it's fighting the change, it's fighting just the flow of the universe. If you are trying to force things, it's always harder.
or
So I
like
think that's
avoiding
just a
things because they're uncomfortable.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's the same thing in life. Like that's why I'm like this this medicine space anyway is such a like a mirror for life in general, and I think that that's how when you integrate the experiences that you have, you can come back into the real world and say, you know what, I can sit with some pretty uncomfortable stuff knowing that like there's something that's going to be on the other side of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So did you stop drinking immediately, or what did that look like for you?
So I tapered down like dramatically. And because I, again, was out in the middle of nowhere on a farm, like there wasn't a whole lot of alcohol provided, like,
Oh, you were in like a slow paced
right. And I was also
environment.
doing like physical manual labor. Like I was up at 7 o'clock in the morning, ready to like pick
Ugh.
greens and did no, I love it. Like my goal is honestly to get back to farm life, like shit on my boots and like dirt under my fingernails and like it's my jam. It's my thing. Like
Shit.
everybody has these definitions of success, right? Like I know I'm successful when I have the house or I have the car, or I have this. And I'm like, I know I will be successful when like I have my own chicken coop and like flock of chickens. Like
Oh
that
my God, I love that.
when I hit that, I'll be like, I've reached my pinnacle of success because that's what I like. That's who I am. I, through all of the psychedelic journeys that I have taken and who I am, it has really brought me back to this like very simple life. And I love it. I like, I want that very simple life. I like preserving things. I make jellies, I make jams, I ferment things, I don't waste. I've got my compost, I recycle. Like I, like don't prescribe to the like pharmaceutical culture. Like it's just not, it's all kind of brought me back to this. I make my own homeopathic medicines for myself and people who want them and things like that. Like it's just it's what I do. Like I like to stay as local as possible these days. Like I really try to like make sure I'm consuming locally and all of that because that's the lessons that I learned from this is like if I can simplify down my life, then I know exactly where my happiness is coming from. And that's really what psychedelics have taught me. And it was something I was pushing away because I had some really big demons that I had to fight in order to get to this place. And a lot of past traumas, as we all do, that I was
Mhm.
blocking out with alcohol, with cocaine, with, like a lot of other stupid shit, like partying and all of that, that like it's different. It's like so different now. My partner and I recently went to see a DJ at this like art installation Otherworld up in Cincinnati, or I'm sorry,
I didn't want to
Columbus.
do it. Yes.
Okay, so first of all, do it. It's awesome. But
Okay.
like I remember dancing up there and I just started like uncontrollably laughing and he looked at me and was like, "What?" And I was like, "If you would have told me at 27 that I would be standing here right now completely sober, like wasn't drinking, no psychedelics, no marijuana, like literally nothing in my system,
Like
just drinking
sober,
water."
sober.
Yeah, like completely sober, dancing harder than like some of the people around me. I would have been like, yeah, no, that's not true.
Right.
Like I would have never believed it, but because of all of this work that I've done, and like that's something that people really have to realize too, I think, is it's a lot of work. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to take this plant medicine, I'm going to sit in this ceremony and then all of this is going to disappear. Not the case.
No.
It's like years of therapy and years of work and years of change and years of somatic work and like years of like parenting that inner child.
Yeah. When was that journey for you? How long ago was that?
So that journey that wasn't really that first journey was 6 years ago now.
Oh, okay.
And then the first time I sat in an actual ceremony for mushrooms, I'm sorry, with mushrooms, was 4.5 years, 5 years ago now. 4.5, because it was right before I went to Costa Rica for the first time. And that was a 7 gram journey.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And within the first like 20 minutes of it, one of the biggest traumas and earliest childhood traumas like immediately rolled out of my mouth.
Oh,
And
shit.
since then, I have been doing nothing but work on that because I realized that this is the exact place where all of these other things stemmed from in my life.
So that's, I think, what the wild thing is, and we do talk about this a lot, but I think unless you've done it, you don't understand the work that's involved. Like it's like they don't fix you. It's not magic, you know. They kind of just show you what it is.
Yep.
And then you have to be the one from that point forward to deal with that thing.
Yeah.
You process whatever it is that it brought up. If it's showing you something that you need to change, you have to be the one to change it. Or if it's showing you a trauma that you don't remember or you've never processed, you then have to go and process that. I've seen people not really do the integration work. And again, it wasn't like they weren't doing it to have to do integration work. They were doing it for fun and ended up having a bad trip. And it was probably showing them some stuff that they didn't want to see and bringing it to the surface. And they're like, no, I don't want to look at that. No, we're going to like, nope, 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 you know?
Yeah.
So because they didn't integrate it, nothing about their life changes. They're still in that hole. They're still, you know, using things to escape without realizing that there's like a possibility of moving forward if you just looked at that thing a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the wild part.
Yeah. So that,
That's the hard part,
oh
actually.
my God, that is the extremely hard part. So that first actual ceremonial mushroom trip was right before, so that was in March, and I had it already set up to go to Costa Rica in May to experience ayahuasca for the first time. And I remember coming out of that mushroom journey and looking at my facilitator and being like, I don't know if I should go to Costa Rica. I don't think I'm ready to look at all of this deeper.
Oh,
And
shit.
they were like, okay, well, maybe not. Like, maybe not. You know, like I wouldn't make that decision right now. Like, you're still, it's like only been a couple of hours that you've been like out of that state, you know, like I'm still like barely able to, you know, hold myself together. Like they're
Right.
getting me all of the thing, you know, they're doing all the facilitator duties of like, here's your water and you should eat this. And I'm like, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't go. I shouldn't do this.
Like where you can't human.
Yeah, yeah, where you're just kind of like, I
You
have
really
arms, but I don't know what they do.
probably shouldn't be making decisions right now
Yeah,
either.
yeah, and she, you know, she was like, maybe you shouldn't, like, maybe it's not for you, but like, let's sit with it for a little bit. Let's give yourself some time. And I'm super glad that I never changed my mind about that one.
So what was ayahuasca like for you? And can you say where you went in Costa Rica, or are they not like, is it not a
I can, but I prefer not to.
perfect.
Um, it was, I can tell you this, it was in the Diamante Valley where there is a lot of places that do plant medicine ceremonies of all varieties.
Okay.
Um, but I just, I feel like I can, but I can't, so I don't know, and I
Oh,
don't want to like put anybody on the spot.
I totally get it.
But I've volunteered there. A lot of them do like volunteer programs. So I didn't just go and you can do them in a lot of different ways. You can go and just experience it as a guest for the weekend or the week or whatever, or you can go and do like I did, where I volunteered. So I also worked in the community. So I worked in the kitchen on the community. So I prepared the meals. You know, like I had to clean the bathrooms like twice a week. You know, we all just kind of rotated all of the duties of things that needed to be done. But then that allowed me to stay there and be there. And that first time I was there, actually, both times I've been to Costa Rica, I've been there for 2.5 months. And the first time was within a community. The second time, I literally just went and stayed with my friend who was the chef at the place that I went to originally, but had moved on. And her and I just did like a solo thing together, which was absolutely epic. But that first ayahuasca ceremonies, I was there, like I said, 2.5 months. And in that time, I sat with ayahuasca 7 times.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, in like a ceremonial setting. So And if your listeners have listened to your experience with ayahuasca, it's a very different situation than when you're doing it with in the jungle. So
I kind
from
of figured that.
yeah, like from what I gathered from you guys, it sounded like your experience lasted like 6 to 8 hours.
Hmm.
Where I was, it was like 12 hours.
Shit.
So the way they would do it is you would come down to the temple. Everybody had their spots in the temple. I actually went at the perfect time. The universe set it up beautifully for me. They were actually holding like a facilitator training while I was there.
Oh,
So, and I went in the off season, because there's dry season and there's wet season in Costa Rica. Because rainforest jungle. And so not a
mhm.
lot of people go during the rainy season because it's not as desirable. It's not that it's not warm or anything like that, but it's not as desirable of a season for people. So they were holding this and they weren't really doing like weekend ceremonies as often or week long, they weren't having guests in as much. And so I was there with all of these people training to be plant medicine facilitators. And the place that I went to also really focused on medicine music. So, not just like, here's some trippy music, but like cultural medicine music coming from Peru, coming from Costa Rica, coming from India, like coming from all of these very spiritually rooted backgrounds. And music is something that like moves me in a way that not very much else does. So being in this place really aligned up quite beautifully for me.
Yeah.
Um, but they start your ceremony and everybody's down in the temple and you drink your first cup and then there is a lot of movement like because they want to get it working through your body, so there's ceremonial dances that are done, there's a lot of singing in the group that's done and things like that, and then you settle in and they don't give you cups as quickly as what it sounded like you did in your ceremony. So ours would be like you'd go through and it was like the first one you waited like an hour or two with that first cup and you would do the dancing, you would do the singing, everybody got smudged in, like everybody had their place, everything was set up for them. And then there was your next cup would come and there'd still be some music, but then there was like a 3 or 4 hour gap and then the next cup would come and then there'd be another gap, and then depending on who you were, and not so much like you get it and you don't, but like who you actually are and what you needed, as you know from your experience, if you don't need it she'll let you know.
Yeah.
She'll
Yeah.
let you know. So like they make it known like we're doing the next cup and if you can get up off your mattress and you can get to it, like you're more than
And
welcome.
you're ready.
Yeah, but if you can't, like then you can wait till the next one or you don't need any more for the rest of the evening. Like that's just kind of how it goes. Um and my first ceremony, in all honesty, scared the ever living shit out of me. And I did not know if I was going to continue to do them.
Holy
Like,
shit.
I felt like I was having an exorcism. I could feel things being removed from me. I my body was contorting in all of these weird ways. It was like, yeah, and like I don't know what's going on, but I'm like, just roll with it. And at this point, I'm like very new to all this. I'm very new to the whole like, I don't know about breath work quite yet. I don't really know about this and all of that. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? What am I doing? So the next day we're like sitting in the sharing circle and I'm sharing all of this. And they're like, no, no. And one guy, bless his heart, was like, look, you're looking for someone to validate what you think happened to you. And he's like, I saw it. He's like, that's what it looked like to me too, you know? And super grateful for him because at first I was like, maybe I'm just crazy and this isn't happening.
Oh
But
shit.
like, there were things that needed to come out of me. There was anger, there was rage, there was upset, there was, like sadness. Like, the mushrooms opened up and said, this is the thing you need to work on. But the thing I needed to work on was really healing this like mother wound and this feminine wound and this energy. Like the thing that I needed to work on was being molested as a child. And so when I stepped into this ayahuasca space and had this grandmother energy, it was like all of this feminine energy that I had packed away for so long because I was taught that it was bad and it was wrong and it could get me in trouble and it could be this and it could be that. So I just pushed it down and pushed it down, was like actually like coming out, but it had to get rid of all the shit I put on top of it first.
Oh, shit.
Like it had to get rid of all of it and unload all of it.
So
And
that
so
was your purging.
that was the purging. It was my body was like, get it out, like get it all out. Like I made noises that I've never heard before and
Oh,
cannot
shit.
emulate. Like it was these like very low vibration, like almost growls. But it was
Oh,
all of that darkness and anger coming out of me. And I don't like say this to like scare people away from doing it. Like if somebody asked me to do it again, if I didn't know what was going on, yeah, I would 100% do it again. Obviously, I still go back to it. I still do it. I went back to it 6 more times after that, and then other, psychedelics past that since then,
yeah.
because it healed things.
I think, I think that's the thing. Like we talk about the unpleasant side of things, and I'm sure people are like, "Oh my God, why would you do it again? Like, why would you keep doing that if you're like shitting your brains out or like puking your guts up?" But what comes after is why we do it again.
Oh yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what it looked like. I get it. Like in the middle of it, you're like, I don't think I ever want to do this again. I've heard people say that after a large trip, and then several months go by, and they're like, okay, I'd do it again.
Yeah, you
Like,
just need some time to like refresh, you need some time to integrate all of that stuff in. You know,
yeah.
the way they did our ceremonies was we did them on the weekends. And so it was like you did a ceremony and then the next day you did a ceremony. And the only reason I did 7 instead of 8 is because I ended up getting bit by a spider. And
Oh
so
shit.
yeah.
Mm.
My like ankles swelled up. I didn't tell anybody back home about it because I was like, they're all going to tell me like they knew that they were right and
You
I
should
shouldn't
have gone.
exactly. So like I was just like, I'm going to send this one out because like I'm not looking to like also roll down the stairs, like
Yeah.
that there's enough going on. Like I don't need to also be injured. Um, but that ceremony, the direct night after, was the ceremony where like I got overtaken by love and joy
Oh,
and like burst out into laughter. Like it's like this, it's very calm, everyone is quiet, like there's no guitars, there's no drums. You're not, when you're in these like circles, you're not really like sitting around talking to each other, you're all sitting in a circle together, and if you're singing you're doing something as a group, but like your communication is very limited because you're all experiencing the same things but on a different level, and as your own being you're just collectively doing it together. And so I'm sitting there in this chair, looking out over the mountain, over the river, like at the edge of the temple, and just start laughing, like dead silent. And I burst out into this like belly laugh, and then can hear people behind me like start to laugh a little bit, but also like try to like not,
yeah.
and like it was so much joy. And
Oh,
so like it was like, okay, look, like here's the deal, it's going to be hard and then I'm going to bring love in, and then it's going to be hard. And that's kind of what I ended up noticing about my ceremonies. I would have like a hard ceremony, uh, a relatively hard ceremony, and then like one that was just like love in your face. And then I would have a hard ceremony, and then like an okay but like still like working through stuff ceremony, and then it was just like, here is all the joy I can pour into you,
oh my God.
and so it was really awesome to kind of see how that duality worked as well, because it was like, okay, we're going to work through stuff, we're going to work on stuff, and then I am going to download all of this love into you, and I'm going to download all of this joy in you. And I got like my favorite compliment I have ever gotten from anybody, hands down till this day, is I was going through something really hard and then I heard Sam laugh, and literally it sounded like a warm chocolate chip cookie for my soul, and I'll never forget it.
Shut the fuck up. That sounds like the best compliment
I know.
ever.
And like when people, like I've had people ask me before, well, what's the best compliment you've ever gotten? I was like, that my laughter made somebody feel like their soul was eating a chocolate chip cookie. And they're like, what the hell? And I'm like, it may not mean anything to you, but it means a million things to me.
And also so fitting
Yeah,
because like you pour your love into food.
right.
Oh my God. I just think I think that's beautiful. All of it. Just the duality of knowing that you're about to like go through something extremely, extremely difficult and like so uncomfortable that you almost don't want to do it again. But then seeing the other side of it is like this pure bliss and love and joy. And it's like, that's kind of what life is,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. And like, so prior to going to Costa Rica the first time, like I I've been a vegetarian since then because I just adapted to the dieta. I definitely still like I'm not vegan, so I didn't like fully adapt to the dieta because I love dairy. Who doesn't like ice cream and cheese, you know? Um,
Yes.
but like I've kept up the vegetarian diet because it's just something that felt right morally to me. It's something that I, like totally vibed with and actually really enjoy. Um, that first After that, I have not touched alcohol. Like I work in the service industry. Excuse me. I work in the service industry. It's a very alcohol and addiction filled place. Like we get new cocktails, we get new wines, we have wine tastings, things like that. And like I don't even taste any. I'm like, just tell me what it tastes like, I'll sell it. It's fine. I don't need to know. I just need to know how to sell it to people. So
Yeah.
like I it has been it'll be 4 years in May that I haven't drank. And I completely and wholly attribute that to mushrooms and ayahuasca. Like mushrooms showed me what needed to happen, and then like ayahuasca made it happen. But it was kind of also similar to my journey. Like I Mother Ayahuasca came to me and said like, "You want to drink again? That's fine, but I'm going to take away everything I gave you if you do."
Oh, shit.
And so I I I'm not ballsy enough to fuck around and find out, to be very honest.
Like,
you know?
you're like, I already fucked around and found out a lot of stuff, and that's not what I want to find out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like I'm not willing to risk it because the healing that it has given me from like all of the past that I've been through has been too great. Like she taught me I was a warrior. There was another experience that I had where I'm ended up covered in dirt. So
Was this last summer?
just this recent summer?
Mhm.
No, so this was the first
Okay.
time that I went.
Okay, okay.
Um, this first time that I went. So after, I had my first ceremony, then I had that second one filled with joy, then that somewhere in between the rest of the ceremonies, they all kind of merged together into one giant experience for me. So to be able to like pick apart which things happened and what is a little difficult. Um, but I was back in a very dark place. So not only did I deal with things in my childhood, but I'm also like a sexual assault survivor. It's happened more than once. And I don't even like saying a sexual assault survivor anymore. I like to say I'm a sexual assault warrior because that's literally what it taught me. I had to go to the bathroom. And so I go down the stairs to where the bathrooms are. I purge it out in the bathroom, and a facilitator comes to like check on me because I've been in there for a minute. So I come out, and the next thing you know, I remember I am in the dirt next to like the hand washing sink, and I am like screaming. And when I say screaming, I mean like I am punching the dirt, I am yelling, I am screaming, I am back in this place viscerally. I can hear it, I can smell it, I can taste it, I can see it. I am back in this place. And like finally, I sat up and I'm, like I said, covered in dirt. And I said, fuck this. I am a fucking warrior. You don't get my energy anymore. And I like stood up and I didn't realize that that facilitator was still standing behind me,
Oh, shit.
and she is someone to this day that I hold very near and dear, and like when I first got there sort of idolized. And I remember like washing up a little bit and her putting her hand on my back and going, "I'm super proud of you." And then we went
Oh,
back up to the circle together. But now, before it was very victim mentality for me when it came to this, like when it came to the whole shebang. But now when I look at it, I'm like, nah, dude, I'm a warrior. Like a lot of those memories are gone because I did work on them and I did process them, but I was holding on to them for so long and letting them define me and who I was and how I showed up and all of these things. And now I can, talk about them. Like if you were to ask me to talk about them before, it would just be like a breakdown into tears and I would run away. But now I'm like, yeah, what do you want to know? Like this happened to me. You're right. Uh-huh. Check, got it. But like that doesn't define who I am. And it's built me into the ability to be this person now because she literally was like, I'm going to make you feel this and you're going to have to process this and you're going to have to go through this one more time to actually let it go.
And stand up a warrior.
Yeah,
That's fucking wild. Have you read the book The Warrior of Light?
I have not.
Okay, I
But
know
your
we
book
trade books
suggestions have
sometimes.
always been great. So I will probably get off here and get it on Amazon because every time you suggested a book to me, I've read it all the way through and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm reading about myself.
It's I just got the book that you suggested, the pink one. I can't remember what it's called now. It's like bright pink Tancha. No.
The Tantra, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't started reading it yet because I'm reading something else right now, but I have it on my nightstand. But The Warrior of Light, it's written by the same person who wrote The Alchemist, and I bought like the whole book set. And that one is I never really thought of myself as a warrior. And just reading this book, everything in it, it's all like anecdotes. It's not like a storyline, but every page is just a different anecdote. And it'll say something like the warrior of light is someone who tells their story, and so other people can learn from them, like that type of stuff,
Yeah.
like where I'm like, holy shit, I'm reading this book and it says the warrior of light isn't always perfect, the warrior of light makes mistakes, the warrior of light owns their mistakes. Like it's all of these things. I started highlighting all the pages that like I related to, and like my highlighter got dry by the end of the book and I was like, shit,
Yeah.
like I might as well, like I didn't have to highlight any of this stuff, like literally every page of the book, like I'm like, holy shit, I relate to that. But it was extremely empowering because all the things that I went through that made me ever feel like a victim, and now holding my power back.
Yeah.
Like that's really what that is. Like those things still happen to me. They still happen to you, but because they happen. And that's like it's such a weird thing. You don't say that to people who are still like processing and going through
Oh
it.
God,
Like
no.
absolutely don't. But when you come out on the other side of it, I think you can look back at those things and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand why that happened. I'm not happy that it did. I'm not happy that I am where I am because of those things, but they made me who I am now.
Yep.
And for that, I'm happy. Like, I'm happy that I'm where I am now because I had to go through those hard things to get here.
Yeah. And that's kind of honestly like when you put out like the hey, we're looking for people to tell us about like how psychedelics helped with your sober journey. For so long I didn't talk to anybody about this because everybody was like, well, what do you mean you didn't take the traditional path of like AA or this, or like you're not really sober or this or that. And I'm like, okay, like but like AA didn't work for me. I came from a Catholic background where I was taught that there was this like higher power thing. And don't get me wrong, I very much believe there is a higher power, but like not in a way that I fear it.
Not the way.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
like, not to say that AA is bad, it's helped a lot of people, but like the AA we have now, it doesn't resonate with me. I don't feel like I'm powerless over this thing. And I'm also not saying that there aren't times when things are going on in my life where I'm like, I want to fucking drink.
Right.
Like there were times going through like lockdown and quarantine where I was like, I wish I could just like drown myself in a bottle right now. But I know, like, one, like I said, too afraid to find out what would happen to everything that I've built. since
Yeah.
not, but like also it's not going to do anything for me and it's not actually going to help me and it's just going to numb me. And like some of the folks at work the other day were joking around. They're like, man, people who like don't drink and don't smoke and like don't like have any other escapes or like aren't on any pharmaceuticals or anything, they're just out there like raw dog in life. Like I don't know how they do it. And I'm standing there polishing a glass and I turned around and I was like, it's fucking hard. And they all just stopped and looked at me and they were like, what? And I'm like, it's hard. Like I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that it's easy. It's not like I'm skipping down the street. Like it's. But I know that when I feel an emotion, what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, how to process it, how to work through it, where it's held in my body, what I need to do now to help work it out of my body, as opposed to just trapping it in there and then wondering why I feel like crap.
We just started learning about like somatic healing. And I think I mean, that sounds like kind of what you're doing. Like you feel where it is in your body and you're able to kind of process it in that way. Um, I did think it was interesting, your story, because Christine and we don't really drink. And I think that weirds people
Oh
out.
yeah.
Like, because we also don't consider ourselves alcoholics. Like I just kind of made the decision one day to stop.
Yeah.
And I just kind of was like, I just don't enjoy it. And we post a lot about like alcohol on our page, but I'll say this too. Like I know, because I'm not an alcoholic and because I never had an issue stopping, I can have a glass of wine or I can have a drink because I want to taste what it tastes like. And it has nothing to do with the way it makes me feel, because I don't like feeling drunk. I just like, oh, that sounds fruity and delicious, I want to try it.
Yeah.
But my husband, and we've talked about this, and we're gonna have him on. He does go to AA, but he got sober because, like, kind of the same way you did. And I think it's wild because he can't really talk about that in AA.
Yeah. Yeah, you
But I
can't.
also think because he's used psychedelics in his sobriety, he's been able to probably, like, this is going to sound terrible, do more in sobriety than the people who are in AA and only doing AA and not doing the work that he's doing on his like inner child and like his traumas. Does that make sense?
It does. Like I
He
totally
doesn't
understand
really
where you're coming from.
subscribe to the like the religious part of A. I know it's not, like, technically it's not religious, but it makes it sound very, very, very
And yeah,
religious.
and that's I can relate to what you're saying a whole lot because I like that is the thing that turned me off from it. And also like I very much was a functioning alcoholic. And from what it sounds like your husband too was like a
Same.
functioning alcoholic. You go to these AA meetings and I would sit down and I would hear these like heart-wrenching stories of people
Same
like
story.
living out of their cars or getting kicked out of this or that, and I'm like, oh well, I shouldn't be here, I'm not this bad off, like I'm just like a line cook who really likes to drink.
Yeah,
But ultimately it was an addiction. But then when it came down to it, like this like having to subscribe to this fact that like I am always going to be powerless to this substance and I need to
right.
turn to this higher source. And like I did need to turn to a higher source, but it wasn't the one that they were telling me.
Yeah,
And I don't feel like I'm ultimately powerless to this substance. Like, I just know that like it's not one that works for me, and I found other ones that do,
yeah,
like, and I found other things that work for me, but it's really difficult because they kind of lump all addiction together. And it's like, oh, well, I a year and a half ish ago, I was looking for actually maybe like 2 years ago or so, I was looking for like a therapist, like a new one to go to. And I started going to this one woman and we started talking and I like let out that I was like, I do plant medicine and we started talking about mushrooms and whatnot. And the thing that made me like the red flag that went off in my head that made me realize she is not the therapist for me is when she said, well, I'd like to get you to a point where you don't need these things and these substances to feel like you can. And I was like, well, I don't feel like I need them. It just makes it like, it's not like I'm out like on the street corner, like begging for mushrooms, like, yo, man, can I get another, like it's
Like,
just allows all of the other things to shut up and the important things to come forward, like I'm not
yeah,
addicted to doing mushrooms. I'm not out here like doing that on every off
scheming.
moment. Yeah, like believe me, I most of the time, even going into mushroom ceremonies now, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know if I really want to do this because I know that it's going to bring up work. I know it's going to bring up the things that I'm not looking at. I know it's going to bring up, but ultimately, those things are the things that help us grow and evolve and become a better person and become more in tune with ourselves and understand like our higher being more. And so I may
Right.
not want it, but like I also know that it's something that works. So I get that with the AA thing because it very much you can't talk about it because then it's like, oh, well, you're still addicted to something, or like you still are letting something hold power over you. But they have
It's
no
also,
problem sitting there like chain smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee like it's the last thing on the world, And I'm like,
but most of
that's
them, and I don't want to say this in like a generalized way, and it's not like a judgment at all, but a lot of them are also on antidepressants.
yeah,
And so it's like, okay, so which one is good and which one is bad? Like, what drugs are good and what drugs are bad? And which ones are we allowed to take and which ones are we aren't? Because like technically you're all taking drugs and you're all addicted to something still. You're just not drinking anymore.
yeah,
And you're just not doing cocaine anymore. But like you're still escaping your feelings by doing this other thing. And I think, we've talked about it before. He doesn't see himself being in this group forever because I know that there are some lifers, and I love that it works for them. Don't get me wrong. I love that it works for them, but I think that he has seen more healing doing other things, that he's like, I'm going to finish my 12 steps and maybe go if I feel like I need a meeting, but outside of that, I don't think I'm going to be one of those people who has to go to meetings the rest of my life. And I was like, I don't think you do either, because I've seen the work that you've done in such a short amount of time with the other stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. There's that whole history thing too with the founder of AA, and the whole like higher power was him having a psychedelic experience and that being removed from the program and nobody talks about
yeah,
it. It drives me insane. Like sometimes it makes me want to go in and be like, do you guys know?
yeah.
Like I just want to scream it, but like also I'm like, okay, I respect your friends. It's fine.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I am in no way dogging AA. There are a lot of
Yeah.
people out there who get what they need out of it, and like, we all have a different journey. We all have a different path. Maybe somebody was so addicted to it that they felt the need that it is a substance that holds power over them, and this helps them. And if that's the case, and that's what got you away from that, and I'm glad it worked for you. It just
Yeah.
never aligned with me. It didn't quite work right for me. It made me feel very much like I was back being indoctrinated into the Catholic religion that like I grew up in, which like really didn't do anything for me good. Like it really didn't. Like we're still working through, like I'm still working through some of those wounds and those traumas, and it's been years that I've not prescribed to that. So like I totally get that. Like, and when it comes to the antidepressants and like that talk of like drugs, you're right. It's this thing where it's like, oh, well, this is a good drug, but this is a bad drug. Well, one of the things in that book that I had suggested to you was like, if there is no good, then there is no bad. So like, if as soon as we say there's something good, then there has to be something bad. Or as soon as we say this is bad, then there has to be something that's good. And the duality doesn't necessarily have to be there. It can just be. Like it
Ooh.
can just be. This isn't like mushrooms aren't good or bad, they just are.
Yeah.
Antidepressants could not be good or bad. They just are. Maybe they do work for some people. Maybe they don't work for other people. You know, I don't dog anybody who are on them. They never worked for me from a very young age. I mean, I remember my parents putting me on them, and I had this little square metal, like SpongeBob lunchbox. And I remember the day my dad found the 160 Prozac pills that he thought I was taking in this box. Because at the age of like 13, I knew I don't like these. They don't work for me. I'm not taking them.
Oh
Yeah.
shit.
Like,
That's
I
huge.
knew from a super young age, like, this doesn't work for me, which always made me feel like an outsider. And still, you know, it's when I tell people, like, yeah, I don't drink, they're like, oh, and they immediately want to like defensively come back with what I don't drink that much or da da da. And I always stop them. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you have one drink a month or if you have 8 drinks in a night. That's on you. Like, I just don't do it. That's, you don't have to defend yourself, you know? Or when people find out, like, oh, you're not on prescription drugs or you're not on antidepressants or mood stabilizer, I'm like, no. And some people are like, oh, well, that's why you are the way you are. And I'm like, maybe, but like, you know, I
What you
also,
said earlier about raw dogging life, I've said that before. Like before my husband got sober, I remember like having these breakdowns and being like, I'm the only one out here raw dogging life, and this is not
yeah,
easy.
it's not. It's, you know, everybody wants to put this like toxic positivity, sunshine and rainbows and like, you know, I do psychedelics and I've done these journeys and this and that. And it's like, right, but where are we talking about like the nights that, you know, like you lay in bed awake crying that inner child to sleep and letting her know that she's safe now? Where do we talk about like relationships finally having to come to an end because you realize that this or that person was taking advantage of you and now you have to start setting these boundaries? Where are we talking about learning where we're the person standing in our way? You know, like we
Right.
don't, everybody just sees this like, it's like, I took mushrooms, now I'm healed, or I did ayahuasca and now I'm healed, or I did this and now I'm healed. And it's like, there's this huge area in between there. And I don't think we're ever fully healed.
I don't even think that in between area ever really goes
No,
away.
because
I
there's
think it
always
comes
something
and goes
more.
away. There, the friendship losses have been a big one and they never get easier.
Ever.
Like it feels like, my guard is up, my boundaries are stronger, like my friendships have all drastically changed and I still have friends. Don't get me wrong, but like sometimes I feel like the bad friend because I'm not doing the things I used to do in a friendship.
Yeah.
It it's wild because there's this like inner dialogue of like, fuck, like, I don't think I can go back to the way that I was, but like, how can I show up for this person because I still love them and I want them in my life, but like, I'm afraid that, they're not going to accept me the way that I am now. I don't know. I've had several friendship breakups that those are always,
Yeah. Oh,
those are almost harder. I don't want to say they're harder than like a relationship breakup because they're all really difficult, but it's almost harder when there's not a reason for it.
mm-hmm.
Like there's not a falling out, there's not a "you did this to me" type situation. Those are easier.
Yeah.
Those are
When there's
easier.
somewhere to
When it's
put the
like,
blame. Yeah.
yeah, but when it's like nothing happened, I'm just different.
Yep.
Like it's a very much like it sounds like a cop out, like it's me, not you, but it very much so is like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. I've just changed.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like people see the raw doggers out there and they're like, must be nice. And I'm like, no, actually, this is really fucking hard. And how many times, let me ask you this personally, how many times do you wish you could have gone back to the old you? Like before psychedelics? I mean, well, not before psychedelics,
Yeah.
but there have been times where I'm like, life seemed easier when I didn't know what I know now.
There have been quite a few times. Like there have been quite a few times where I'm like, man, I wish I could just go back, but then also I'm like going back isn't the answer. Like it's
Right.
not. I I lost one of my nearest and dearest friends who was like a sister to me. I never thought that it would ever happen. But it got to the point where it was like things weren't sitting right. I was doing things that maybe she didn't feel was right. She was doing things that I didn't feel was right. And it just got to a point where like both of us stopped trying. Like we just both stopped trying. And I mean, this is like over 2 years old now, and still part of me is like, man, I sometimes wish I could just go back to having that, like that bond, that sisterhood, that thing, because it's really hard to find. When you
Yeah.
like really bond with somebody, it's hard to find. But I also have learned whenever I get into that space to be like, you know what? You still have all of that time with that person. It didn't go anywhere. You have every lesson that person taught you. You have every good memory that person taught you. You have every experience you had with that person. And instead of getting upset with it, I'm like, just be grateful for all of that situation and being able to like finally. And this last time, this summer, when I was in Costa Rica, I thought I was going to be purging a lot of one thing. And it actually ended up being a lot of dealing with just like coming to terms with like, I had one of the most significant relationships of my life. And then I had 2 years of dealing with not having that, and finally being able to sit with it and be okay with it and not hold any more resentment and not hold any more anger and not hold any more ill will towards it, and just be like, you know what? I love you. My energy will always love you. I hope the best for you. I hope things work. I hope you get what you want out of life. I just can't be part of it anymore. And I'm currently in that phase. Like I'm noticing it throughout. Like I had a conversation with my therapist that basically went like, all of these people used to have a seat at my table, and then they're like getting up and the seats are like, it's starting to empty out. And
Hmm.
I can either be okay with sitting at this empty table for a while and just being like grateful that at one time it was full and remembering that it will be full again soon, or I can just like sit here and ruminate over the fact that it's so different now and I don't have this and I don't have that. But that isn't making me grateful for all of the other people that are there. There are still people there. And
Yeah.
so like one of my friends, like I knew him the longest. He's the person I've known the longest. I met him like the first person I met when I moved to Louisville. Recently, like when I came back prior to going to Costa Rica, I like every time we got together would just get this heavy feeling, and it's just like, why am I doing this? But out of obligation, out of friendship, out of this, always showing up, you know? But the
Hmm.
conversation was always the same. We always had to go somewhere where he could get drunk. I noticed that, like, especially after reading the Empath Survival Guide, that, like, one of the things that I do is ground myself with food. So, like, anytime we went out, we would have to go out somewhere that he could sit at a bar and drink, but it also had to have food. And then I would find myself eating to the point where I was, like, coming home and not feeling good because I was just trying to block that energy. And then I was like, okay, well, you have to have this conversation. You have to do this with them. And it was like, no, you don't. Like you don't. It can just like be what it is. And like that person now has like faded away. And there's no ill
Yeah.
will, there's no ill intention. Like I don't hate him. I don't like we just it was out of like longevity and obligation that there was a friendship, but not genuine connection.
Yeah.
And so I'm like watching all of these people, like these people disappear from my table. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is that like part in my story where I have to be okay with sitting at an empty table and sitting with myself and aligning with myself to figure out what is next so that the new people can come in and be new teachers and be new guides and be new friends and be new ambitions and things like that. And like it's a very big trend in my life right now that I'm seeing, especially since coming back, because I did a lot of release. I did a lot of personal work. I had the ability to spend a month and a half in a beautiful beach house on the ocean at a beach where literally I could be on it for hours and never see another human being. Like, I'm not even
That's not
kidding you.
too
In Costa Rica, I fell asleep. My window, like my house was so close to the beach, I fell asleep listening to the ocean. I lived my life by the tides because when you wanted to walk the beach, it had to be low tide. It couldn't be high tide because it was all the way up. Like I didn't, like go to, there was no grocery store. A guy drove by in a truck twice a week and had vegetables, and you got what you got from him.
Oh, shit.
There was like a little tiny store that you could grab a few things, but not much, like, and it was this very simple life, but it was great for me as an empath because I finally got to completely just solidify into what was mine. And
Yeah.
once I did that, coming back, I was like, I don't want your stuff anymore. 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 I'm sorry, your stuff isn't working for me anymore. I recently had a friend come back into my life, and I'm like, I'm so glad I get your stuff back, because her energy is this just like badass, fuck it, we're gonna do this. We can do this. It doesn't matter. And like right now, that's what I need. So it's that
Yeah.
like it was a really great experience for me, and I'm super grateful that I've set my life up in a way that I can take those experiences, and when my energy goes it's time to go, I don't even think about it anymore. Like my energy said it's time to go at about the end of May, and I was gone at the beginning of July. I took a
Oh,
month to
shit.
pull all my shit together. I took a month to get everything together, and then was like, I'm out. And like, I know a lot of people don't understand it, or they were like, you're just running away from things, or blah. And I'm like, you can think whatever you want. Like, I don't care. Like, this is what I need to do for me. This is what
You're like,
my
actually, I'm going to sit with
yeah.
myself.
And that's the thing, everybody's like, oh my god, must be nice. And I'm like, do you don't even understand what I was doing? Like I
Right.
like it I can make it sound really beautiful. Like I was at this beach and nobody else was around. But do you know what it's like sitting on a beach and yelling at the ocean because you're angry? I literally sat at the ocean and yelled at her for crashing her waves. Like I distinctly remember sitting there and being like, fuck you. You just keep bringing these waves and you just keep crashing these waves and it doesn't matter and you don't stop and you just keep coming. And like, my friend
Oh,
let me
shit.
sit there and do that for a little while. And then she came up and she's like, you can keep yelling at the ocean, but all she's going to do is take your rage and wash it back in every way.
Shit.
Like there was another time I took some stuff out to the compost pile, and the next thing you know, I'm in the dirt covered in compost, yelling and screaming about my life to the sky. And I realized at like a certain point I had to stop, because the like indigenous people of Costa Rica, they're called ticos and ticas. I realized like all of a sudden, like all the ticos and ticas in the neighborhood started to drive by more. And I was like, oh, you look like the crazy gringo, because I'm like
Oh, shit.
in this pile of compost, like, I fucking get it. I get it. I've got to start again. And this is where we're at. And I understand, like screaming to the
Oh,
sky. But like you can't do that here. I can't go out on my back patio and do that. Like I've got a house to my left, a house to my right, a house behind me. Like people are going to call the cops and be like, "Hey, there's some crazy lady," like it's
right.
not really a possibility. So I I don't know. It taught me that I like my alone time, but like I also really need those times to like alone to process. So like, yeah, I got to do it in a beautiful space, and like, yeah, I also get to do it sitting with medicine and things like that. But like, it's not this like, I'm going to Costa Rica and we're gonna have all this fun and da 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 da. Like, yeah, I had fun, but also like worked through some really, really deep things, because it's hard to do that here and then be like, hi, what can I get you to drink? Oh, okay, and here's our specials tonight. And like my job is that's what I do. Like so it gave me the time to be completely to myself. Like, and it's needed sometimes. I needed to dump out some anger. I needed to dump out some rage. I needed to dump out some sadness. Like I needed to resort through what was important in my life and what wasn't. I I remember, so this ceremony was very small and it was only four of us who were there. Um,
Oh shit.
yeah, so it was four of us. It was four women. It was super powerful. Like, three of us knew each other and had sat together before, and then it was another girl's. The other girl had brought her girlfriend with her this time. So like, obviously the two of them knew each other, but like, it was a super small group. And I remember at the start of the ceremony, I I'm a very like visceral physical person. I mean, as I'm sure you can tell, I'm sitting here like flailing my hands around, things like
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah.
in this ceremony, just I started screaming and everything in my body tensed up, like, and I am curled in a ball just screaming, okay? And the facilitator is like smudging around me and changing out my purge bucket and doing all of that. But I'll never forget it. And I still hear it in my head, especially when I get angry. And it immediately snaps me out of being angry now because these other two are sitting there and I'm literally like nonstop, just like, my body's in full tense position, like curled into a ball. And these two are sitting there like, everything is turning to joy. Everything is singing this medicine song. And I'm just like this raging thing of anger. But now every time I get angry, like I hear that in the back of my head and I'm like, everything. And I just start laughing. And I'm like, fuck, okay, yeah, you know what? Like eventually everything is going to turn to joy because eventually I got it all
Right.
out. And then I started crying. And because what I've learned about myself is that, like, and most of us learn about ourselves is like if you're angry or upset or any of those things, 9 times out of 10 it reduces down back to being like sad and not feeling heard. And you
Yes.
know, and immediately I started crying after that and was like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry I let any of this happen to you. Like, I'm so sorry. And then I feel my body every time on every psychedelic. Like, I get this feeling right in the back of my head here, and it starts to tingle. And then I feel my, and this is my like telltale sign, I'm like, oh, here it comes. Because then my head just starts thrashing and my whole body starts thrashing. My hands are smacking the ground, everything. And my feet are twitching, my whole body, right? And I know you kind of know this feeling. Well, you may not know it, but they said it had happened to you, right? Like, and you
Yeah.
didn't
I was
know it
like
was happening.
twitching
Yeah.
and yes. Yeah.
So the whole time, the first times I had done
Like a
ayahuasca, yeah. Oh yeah.
like that's how I
I'm
felt.
like, my
Like, oh
hands were
shit.
just like smacking the floor and like smacking, like my whole body was vibrating. But the entire time I just kept telling myself, like, while working with my breathing, I just kept saying, this is your body recalibrating to love. Like, this is your body re-vibrating itself to love. Because whatever's going on, it's vibrating things out and it's vibrating things in. And this is your body recalibrating to love. And that is what pulled me through the like bad part of that journey. But none of that journey was bad.
Right. Right.
Like, it was all
Is that
about bringing me back to that center and like aligning my body with love again. And like, if you got to see some dark shit to get to that, like, show me the dark shit.
well, what do they say? Like, light enters through the dark.
Yeah.
Like it can't exist without the dark. Like that's where it goes into. You were talking about warriors earlier, and I know I brought up the book, but I started watching a movie with my daughter last night called, oh God, A Wrinkle in Time. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Somebody sent it to me the other day because they were like, "This movie reminds me of a mushroom trip," and so I'm like, "Oh well, shit, I gotta watch it." And it's like, it's like on Disney Plus, and it has like Reese Witherspoon and Oprah, and it's like super Chris Pine. It's like super cute and kid friendly, but you're watching it, and the entire time you're realizing that the answer to everything is love, and I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah, like, it sounds so cliche,
it
like, and
does.
I sound like so, I feel like I sound like so cliche and like so stereotypical when I say it, but it really is. Like, if you're not aligning things with love, then like you're not happy, like
Right.
my business came from me like really loving being in the hospitality industry. but like not loving the aspects of it, like not loving the waste, not loving the wear and tear on my body, not loving, like I don't necessarily love that I serve alcohol, but like it's a demon that I deal with right now. But it's another reason that I'm trying to build this thing where I'm working more in a spiritual setting and nourishing people in a different way. But like that all came from love. And I started one way. And when I realized like I don't love what I'm doing, I stopped and reworked it. And then when I realized like I don't actually love this, and like I just took on a new client last night and I was like, ooh, I don't think our energy vibes. Like, do I want your money? Yes. But do I want the energy vibe more? Also, yes. Because if I don't love what I'm doing for you, then I'm not giving you what you need. And it, like it
Right.
is, do you love waking up and seeing what you're seeing every morning? Do you love doing what you're doing? And like I can't say that like I'm great at it. Like I still am resistant to some change. Don't get me wrong. There are things
Right.
that I fight all of the time. We're human. Like that doesn't disappear. But I love the fact that I get to wake up and go, okay, like, do I love how I'm showing up today? Like, am I showing up in a way that is resonating with who I am and like letting people feel my energy as it really is? Because that to
Right.
me is that thing of love, like I love myself. I love my faults. I love, how I'm showing up. I love my story. I love my journey. And that's another thing that like brought me to want to do this, cuz like for so long I didn't talk about it. Like no one knew that I had been molested as a child. No one knew that I had been a sexual assault survivor. People meet me now have no idea that I used to be an alcoholic or did a bunch of cocaine. Like up until 6 months ago, I used to be like one of the biggest potheads I knew. Like I smoked so much weed, but I can't anymore.
Forgot about that
Yeah.
part.
Like I don't even
Shit.
smoke weed anymore.
Because when I first met you, we were
Hella
smoking.
weed. Like I smoked weed all day, every day. Like it is what I did. Like,
I completely forgot about that part that you told
yeah,
me,
I like can't even do it anymore. Uh,
which I think, we've talked about like, we talk about plant medicine, and Christine and I are not anti-cannabis or pro-cannabis. Like we used to like use it ourselves kind of in the same way. I don't know if I would have considered myself a pothead. It was more of an escape on the weekends type thing. Like my husband would drink and I would
yeah.
smoke like instead. And it was the only time that I felt normal.
Mhm.
It was the only time that I felt like I wasn't holding the weight of everyone else that I spent my time with every day. So it literally was an escape for me. Um, and so the people who knew me then and knew that I was like pro cannabis, like hear me talk about it now, and it's very different. Like I don't use it as an escape, but I will smoke on a date night to relax and to calm down and to have like some good sex. You know, the intention behind it is very different. I don't smoke near as much as I used to. But I think that's what came of that, like, where you just, like, decided you were just weren't gonna do it anymore. How did that happen?
So prior to leaving, so like I said, this time around, I left for Costa Rica at the beginning of July. So prior to leaving, like a couple of months before that, I I would smoke and I would get really anxious, and I was like, maybe like I was trying to correlate things and figure out where my anxiety was coming from and whatnot. And then it kind of correlated. Like every time you smoke, you get anxious, and every time you smoke, like is when this sort of pattern clicks into your brain and whatnot. So I went to Costa Rica, and my friend there, like she was like, "Well, I have a bag. Like you can have it if you want it." And I was like, "Okay, well, let's see. So I didn't smoke for a couple of days, and then I would smoke, and like all that anxiety would come right back. And so like I tested my theory basically, and then I
Yeah,
just I just stopped. Like so my trip was split in between two different places. So I started out for a month and we were at her one place, and then we rented this house down by the beach for the next month and a half. So that first month is when I like tested my theory and whatnot. And then when we moved to the beach house, I stopped. And, I think it was another thing, like very much like you said, I was using it to escape. I was using it and I used it to cover my anxiety for so long. Like I used it to cover the fact of my social anxiety because then like it didn't matter. I used it to cover the fact that like my job was taking on a lot of other people's energies. And like, I mean, I used to show up to the restaurant that I worked at and I was just like baked. Like I was baked, And like it's normal for the restaurant industry. So like nobody said
Yeah.
anything, like people would go outside to smoke cigarettes and I would like walk outside and like hit my vape pen or like hit my one hitter and like it just like it was, like everybody knew it about me and like I was the person who always fought for the fact that like, excuse me, I'm a very productive pothead because I was like I had my shit together, I
Yeah.
was productive, I had things going on.
I was not a functioning
It was
like, I can't leave my house.
no, dude, like it was the state in which I lived my life because it was the thing that was I think also helping with like being the empath of like
Yeah.
blocking everybody else's shit because if I was
Yes.
so high that I didn't feel it coming at me, then it didn't feel it coming at me and I couldn't absorb it. But then it started changing for me and so I tested my theory and then I didn't smoke for a while and then I came back and I tried smoking and mind you like the weed you get in Costa Rica versus like the primo weed you get here is very different, like so I took
Yeah.
like 2 hits of a joint here and was just like nope, done. And so I tried to test that theory again a few times and every time that I've tried to test it it's just been like why are you doing this? And I even remember during like my ayahuasca ceremony, I only did one this last time I was in Costa Rica. And I literally like remember having a conversation with Mother Aya about it and her being like, it's okay to put this one down. And it was an identifier of mine for so long. Like I was the proud, productive pothead. I'm
Yeah.
like, I've got my shit together. I'm going to work. Like this doesn't bother me. Like I'm building a business. I'm doing this. Like I can do this. Like don't talk shit about us. Like we can do things. But like I remember having a conversation with her and her just being like, you can let this one go. Like it's not an identifier of yours. Like the things you do are not identifiers of yours. I had a hard time with that when transitioning in my like career too. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be and this is who I am, but it's not. Like it's this, you have a podcast, but like you aren't just your podcast, or like you
Mm.
have your so like your esthetician work, but like that's not all you are. But we put all these identifiers on ourselves. And so like that's something that I'm working on currently is like removing those identifiers of myself. Like I am not a pothead. I used pot. I used weed, but like I don't even smoke anymore and it's really weird. I'm still like getting used to it. I on the very rarest of occasions I've been back since August and I think Christmas. We had a very small Christmas. It was me, my partner, and a friend, and we ate some mushrooms, and like I was able to smoke weed. That's actually the only time since being back that like I've been able to smoke weed is like after psychedelics. But I
Ah.
also think that's just because my body is like, okay, you need some help like working through this, and it is a plant medicine.
Yeah.
And I think for so long I abused a medicine.
Yeah.
And so,
That's what I was gonna say. I think, after psychedelics, I have just realized I don't need it the way that I needed it before. Like, it's just a very intentional thing, and which is wild because it's like what your therapist was saying, "Well, we're gonna get you to a place where you don't need to do these things." Like, there's not like a need for psychedelics. It's almost like I'm evolving, I'm growing, I'm moving forward in my life. And I know that this is going to be an incredible potentiator for moving forward into wherever I need to be
yeah,
next. And it's not an everyday thing. It's not an every month thing. Sometimes, it could be 6 months to a year before you touch something like that again. And I think that like that just goes to show I don't need
Yeah.
it.
I mean, other than microdosing, because even Christmas, when we, it was still just microdosing. Other than microdosing, I haven't done a large, excuse me, mushroom ceremony since November of last year. So it's been over a year. It was
Yeah.
November of 2021.
Mine was September of 2021 and I still haven't done another one, but I think Christine and I are going to do one this weekend.
Nice. Hey, go for it.
Just like holidays are heavy,
They
man.
are.
Like holidays when you have like family drama and family shit, like they're heavy and we did ayahuasca in November and I think that it would have been heavier if we didn't go into the holiday situation having just come out of like an ayahuasca ceremony, but I'm still like, I think you just feel when you're ready to do another one and that's what we're
Yeah.
feeling,
And
you
there's
know?
different, like different people resonate with different medicines. I know some people who are like, I tried ayahuasca once. I appreciate it for what it is, but I don't think I'd go back to it. I like mushrooms. I like ayahuasca better, but that's because I'm on a different healing journey. So I need a different medicine.
Right.
So I am more inclined to try to seek out that sort of healing instead of going towards the mushroom healing as often. Like, I love the
Yeah.
microdosing. It's definitely had its benefits, but it also, like, I don't find myself looking for these large journeys as often. I very much kind of resonate more in that DMT world as opposed to the psilocybin world. Like,
Yeah.
I there's just something about that world that suits what I'm doing a little better.
Right. And I think we even said that in our podcast, like we loved our experience with ayahuasca, but mushrooms are kind of our
Yeah.
thing. Like like we resonate more with mushrooms. It's more that's my medicine. And that might change, you
Yeah,
know?
as as things
That very
call
well
to you,
might
you
change,
learn different things, and you can learn,
right?
like, okay, like, I know when I'm working on healing my feminine energy, like, ayahuasca's a route I want to go. I know when I'm looking to do more of something fun, like LSD is the route I want to go. Like, even if I try to have like fun on mushrooms, like, it doesn't happen for me really anymore. Like, there's always like this sort of like ceremonial thing that just kind of clicks in and it always becomes healing. But like, if I know that I'm like, I just want to like let loose for a little while, like, please give me some LSD.
I feel like there's like a prescription to all of these. And I've tried to say this before, like LSD for me is more of a inner child fun
Yes.
type situation. And I know that it can also be used therapeutically and for healing, but I've never done that. I like to use it for fun.
Same.
And with MDMA, that is like what I use. Well, I have never done that outside of a setting with just my husband and I. So for that, it's like a connection
Of
thing.
course,
Like
my partner and I
I
have
want to
used it for
feel
the exact same reason. There was one point in our
yes, it's
relationship,
healing in that
yeah, where
way.
we were going through something that, like, it was a really difficult time, and it wasn't even like we're going to take this and just like bang it out in the bedroom. It was like
Right.
we ended up like taking a moderate dose, and then we sat there around this fire at this cabin that we rented and talked about our relationship for hours without either of us getting into these extremely triggered states and not being able to get any further because all of these things needed to come out, needed to be said, needed to be talked about. But like, sometimes you need help regulating that system from an external
Yes.
source.
I told someone today, I think that it helps with us because my husband is also on the spectrum. So I feel like there's like this language barrier. Like it is so hard to communicate. And sometimes what I'm saying, he's hearing in a very different way. And I said, when we do MDMA, like it's like, about this much because the sex is awesome, and this much because we're able to communicate and there's not a language
Yeah.
barrier. And it's like we're speaking to each other on a soul level and we're hearing each other on a soul level. And that's why I'm like, kind of the same thing. Like, I'm like, we've been going through the trenches lately. I think it's time we do another journey together. and that's kind of like the whole intention behind it. So yeah, for all of these medicines, I feel like there's a reason and a purpose, and one thing resonates with you now and then this will resonate with you later, and there's no rules. Well, I mean, there's probably not rules, but like what's the word where you're like suggestions. Yeah. There aren't rules to which path is right for someone and which one isn't. Like it's just like prescriptions almost.
Yeah.
Like if this is what you're trying to work on, this is probably the best route for
Yeah,
you.
like I know people who can sit down and smoke DMT and just like have these crazy amazing experiences. And then I know that there have been times like I have sat down and tried to smoke DMT and literally like got kicked out of my experience. Like
Oh
yeah,
shit.
like there was a small group of us, and we were, like we all were each taking our time, and I happened to be on my cycle, which I find really interesting because smokable DMT tends to have a more masculine energy, as ayahuasca is known as that more feminine energy. So I always come to this place in my head, that like Rolodex, that Realmodex place that I was talking, but it's very
Hmm.
like Merkaba, and everything is very chrome and like iridescent for me. And I literally like I hit this pipe and I get to this place, and I'm standing there and I can physically see myself. I'm like astral projected standing there in this like spinning chrome Merkaba, and this energy comes to me and is just like, you're on your cycle. You're not allowed to be here right now, and just pushes me. And the next thing you know, and I'm back. I'm like back
What
sitting in
the
this
fuck?
circle with everybody, and I'm like, and
Rude.
they're like, dude, you good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And they're like, what do you what? And I'm like, I'm not allowed. Like it's telling me I'm not allowed to do this right now. Very
Oh
much like
shit.
when drink too much ayahuasca, you're going to end up throwing it up. It's telling you you don't need any more, you know? Like
Right.
it tells
Right.
you when you're supposed to do it and when you're not. Now there was another time I smoked DMT, the first or second time I ever smoked DMT, I literally met the universe. I broke through, I met the universe, I spiraled down to literally that point of light, that single point of light that we like everybody always talks about being the universe. I spiraled down through the spiral of history. I saw like from where I was, it went past my lifetime. I saw presidents go by, I saw lifetimes go by, I saw all of these things like spin by history, and it just kept getting tighter and tighter until it was just this point of light. And it literally was like, hey, like welcome, you've met God, you're here.
Oh
Yeah,
shit.
like
And that was like what, all in like 10, 15
yeah, it
minutes?
was about a 20-minute experience. And then, like, as I'm coming back out of it, like, there's this giant spinning Shiva, like iridescent Shiva, just in my like little tiny studio kitchen. And I remember getting up and like running outside and wanting to do nothing but be in nature because I'm, as we've talked about, very, very nature
Mhm.
person. Like,
Yeah.
I lived in an area where that was not necessarily the smartest thing to do. I lived in an alleyway of like a very famous bar here in Louisville. So like there's a grocery store and the bar and then like my little house, and I'm like laying on the ground in the backyard, and I just remember my partner who was with me at the time uh coming outside and being like, I know you want to be out here. I get that you want to be with nature right now. You cannot do this right here. Like you look like you're on drugs because we are on drugs, and like cops notoriously drive this alleyway because of where it's at. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So like he brings me inside and like puts some plants around me and is like, this is the nature that you've got right now. Like, and like that's where I sat.
Best you can
Yeah,
do.
like that's where I sat in my like little space and my comfort, and like came back to. But like these experiences, these things, like it just teaches you that it's like it's all inside of you.
Yes.
Like it's all
Yeah.
inside of you.
Would that be, we started like closing out episodes with asking what the biggest lesson that you got from psychedelics was. And I guess I kind of want to ask you yours because that's such a big question because I feel like I've learned so much in such a short amount of time, and it's hard to say which one is like the biggest lesson. But if you could give us one biggest lesson, what would it be?
So I think the biggest lesson that I've gotten from doing psychedelics, whether it be in the fun party state or like the ceremonial space, is that as long as I am working my path and doing the things to genuinely make me feel happy, I am divinely protected. And no matter what happens, I will be taken care of. Because as long as I am working on that path of doing what is right for me and not giving two hoots about what anybody else wants me to do, what anybody else thinks is right, that I am then divinely protected because I am living as authentically as it wants me to.
I love that. I love that. And you're moving more towards the things that you love
Yeah.
doing. And I know we already said that about like love being really like the answer to everything, like love being like the best frequency. Like, I'm phasing out of the career that I'm in because I don't love it anymore. And even though I'm not completely out of it, like it's wild because I know what I do love. I love doing this. I love doing what we're doing in the medicine space and like the psychedelic space. Like that brings me so much joy that like going to work almost feels like
Yeah.
torture. And so I am literally counting down the days. Like, and it's not because I don't love my clients. I love my clients. I've known some of them for 12 years and it's hard because I love them. I don't find joy in what I do at all anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm moving more towards love. I'm moving more towards joy. I'm moving towards what makes me happy, and that's not easy. I get it. Like making that decision to retire has been a tough one, but also like a peaceful decision because I know that I'm doing the right thing. You
Yeah.
know, you do know.
Yeah, when I went from like stepping out of like being a line cook and working into commercial kitchens and that being such an identifier to me, like I felt like I was losing a part of myself. And then I kind of felt like I was selling out because I was like, oh, now I'm just going to go like serve the food. And even now, when I came back from Costa Rica, I was like, oh, I'm not going to get back into the restaurant industry. And for a while I didn't. But then I hit this place where like, we also still live in this realm, in this world, and things need to get taken care of, you know?
Hmm.
But I have found a way to, and have been lucky enough to find a restaurant where like they work around my schedule. If I have to tell them, like I told them like 2 days before, I was like, I'm sorry, I can't come in for this shift you have me scheduled for. I have a client like for my business now. They were like, okay, cool. Like, I've found a ways to set boundaries in this realm to make sure that I am still moving towards what I want to do. And it's really nice to be able to do that because now I know like this isn't going to be my end story. This isn't what I'm going to do forever. And like, yeah, like sometimes we have to do things like because we all need to put a roof over our heads and food on our plates and all of these things and, all of these very real life things. But I think knowing that I'm working towards doing that for myself in a way that more aligns with me, like I'm starting to throw like some ideas around in my head about like a product line of things that I want to do and like things like that and like really knowing that again if I'm working towards what I want and I'm doing that then I am like divinely protected and I will always have what I need. I may not
Literally.
have all of these things that people tell me I need or this or want but I will always have what I need. I will always know that I will be safe. I will always know that I have a roof over my head. I will always know that I can provide what I need to sustain my life and keeps me happy. And like ultimately that's the most important thing to me. Safety has always been a big one since childhood for me. So like
Yeah.
I have gained from psychedelics this fact of knowing that like I am divinely protected. I am safe. I am loved. Like, and it's huge. Like, one of the mantras I got out of my whole experience in Costa Rica this last time was I am loved, I am safe, I am limitless.
Ooh, that's
And like
beautiful.
those I think are the most important things. Like you're
Yeah.
protected, you're loved, and you can do whatever you want. I think we said it more
Yeah.
than once throughout our conversation. Like you're always the one standing in your way. Like, yeah, there may be some bureaucratic red tape or there may, but like ultimately,
Mhm.
like you're the person who stands in your way on like what you do and what you don't do and what you heal and what you don't heal and what you're willing to see about yourself and what you're not willing to see about yourself. And there is still plenty about myself that I'm like, no, 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 we're not there yet. We don't need to look at that yet.
Right,
You know?
right. We'll get
Yeah,
there soon.
like I think that's another thing in
When I'm
psychedelics that
ready.
people don't talk about. Like there is also this ability to be like, I'm not ready to look at this yet. And they'll go, okay, well, we're going to look at this then.
Right, right. There's some power in
Yeah.
that too. Um, I don't think I like, not that I didn't realize, I mean, of course, I feel like I didn't realize, that you did more than just like the ceremonial food space. And that makes me angry that I didn't even think to ask. Like, I feel like such an idiot because I'm like, there have been so many things that I could have been using you for and I wasn't using you. So already I feel like this is like going to be a really beautiful thing for you. I want to let our listeners know that like, I just did my first like new moon women's circle the other night. There wasn't food involved, but like we've talked about doing and hosting events in the community for our listeners who are local. And this is really good information to
Yeah, like
know.
that is I don't just want to focus on people just who are doing psychedelics. I want to focus on people who are doing the work in general.
I
So,
love that.
like I did a women's circle for an entire year. I catered for that. I have clients that I go to their house and do weekly meal prep. I really like to focus on people who are following like my morality line of like keeping it local. Um, I work with people who have CSAs, that's community supported agriculture. So like I get it it's this like grassroots movement. And so people ask me all the time, like, do you have Instagram? Do you have a website? Like I'm in the process of rebuilding my website because I was doing something at the beginning that didn't really align with me. So I'm rebuilding that and like they're like, oh, well, do you have Instagram? And I'm like, I do, but there's like 4 or 5 things on it because I'm not super like tech savvy and like it's not like I like building my thing by like word of mouth and people going,
Word
oh
of
my God,
mouth.
like her energy in this, that's what you want, and that's how I've gotten the clients that I do have. It's like almost all of them have been word of mouth with like a lot of them have come from like one specific woman, which I'm like super grateful for. She's been like, I use her every week. She comes to my home. I love her energy in my home. I love the fact that like she's being local. I literally like take the scraps of your vegetables and I bring them home to my composters so they can be composted and used in my garden. I take your recyclables, I wash them all out, I dry them all out. If you don't recycle, I recycle them. Like it's this whole encompassing thing for me because it I'm looking at a bigger picture. I'm not really looking at like, I want to make money. I'm looking
Yeah.
at like, this aligns with my morals and values. And if these people are aligning with these morals and values and I can, give this service, I'd love to. So it basically comes to anything doing with food, like
Love.
anything when it comes to doing with food, like I'm there for it, whether it's catering something or helping you cook or helping you preserve your garden or teaching, like I have some people like, well, are you willing to teach me it? I'm like, of course. Like if I could teach you enough to work me out of your life, like in that capacity, like yeah, you want to talk about that, you want to learn how to ferment things, you want to learn how to like make things and do things, like that's what really makes me happy. I make some
Okay.
products that I like go to restaurants and get their scraps and then use them to make products and different things like that because it's I don't know, I've just all of my psychedelic experiences have taught me like if all of these things are coming from plants, you better be giving back to the earth.
Oh,
Like
I
if
love
all
that.
of these things that are healing you, whether it's aromatherapy or plant medicine or the food that you're eating or the water that you're drinking, all of this is coming from Mother Nature. So you best be feeding back into her.
You know what I feel like? I know I keep dragging this out, and I'm sorry. I I think that I've realized since meeting all the people that I've met in this space, everyone usually has a gift. It's not always the same as everyone else's. Like, you have a gift with food. I can't cook. I can't fucking cook. So, like, the way that the medicine is telling you, like, hey, if you're receiving these benefits and healing from us, we need you to give back by doing
Mhm.
this. And what I have heard is if you're healing and receiving this stuff from us, we need you to talk about
Mhm.
it. We need you to create a platform where other people can talk about it and other people can hear it, because not everybody's gift is their voice. And I feel like that's mine, is my voice and giving back in that way. So it's like kind of wild to see. I think some people sometimes are afraid to do psychedelics because they don't want to turn out like
Oh
me.
yeah. No, I
And
feel
I'm
you. I've
like,
had people say
but you
exactly
won't.
that. They're like, "Well, I don't wanna," and I'm like, "Well, fine, don't learn what your
But you
gift is.
won't.
That's cool."
Right, right. I'm like, you're not going to be like me. You'll be like
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, because if we all had the
You
same
know,
gift, it wouldn't be a gift anymore.
literally. And I can literally say, I think that my husband was terrified to do his first journey because he was afraid of being like me. like, I don't want to be spiritual. I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be like the person in the corner talking about mushrooms. And I'm like, then you won't be.
Yeah.
like that's not you. That's me. And that's not, mushrooms didn't make me this way. They just kind of brought me closer to who I was
Yep.
originally, you know? Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. So I guess if people want to find you, once we put this episode out, if there's any types of links or Instagram or anything that you want to share, I'll put them in the
Yeah,
bio.
I definitely
And
like I said, totally willing to share the Instagram. Like I am learning to get better at that with the social media presence. I'm just not a really tech savvy
it's
person.
hard.
I don't do
It's
yeah, I don't do a
hard.
lot of social media in
Social
my
media
like
is
own
weird.
world. Like if you were to look at my personal social media page, it's like food, plants, my pets. That's it. Like I don't do a lot of like I'm not great at remembering to take pictures and things like that. Um but if people do want to get a hold of me, a great way to do so would be to reach out on my Instagram and I'll send that link over to you. You can also email me and I can send that over and we can do it. And I'll have
Yeah,
my website made up so I can definitely send that over. I'm working on finalizing some things on it. Like as we speak, it's up in the background. I'm waiting to work on that. But I can, if they know you and they want to exchange information that way, that's totally doable. I can send my email. We can link that, anything. Like, I love sharing anything I can with anybody who is willing to receive what I have.
I feel like, I mean, we've already been working with you for a couple of years, but like, I feel like I'm going to have to start using you way more than I
Yeah,
realized.
please do. Please do.
I know, right? You're like, yes,
Yeah,
please,
like
yes,
I
yes.
love your
So
energy. I would love to be in your home. I would love to share with you. I would love to, like I've heard you guys on the podcast a few times talk about or have people say like I feel like I don't have friends within this realm and I very much feel that way and to like start opening up to people who don't drink, who don't, aren't on prescriptions, who don't smoke weed like that, who don't do all of these different things, who are working on somatic practices and are learning about these things and are willing to be like,
where are your
what's
people?
your trauma and where is this and how, like
Right.
that's what I
Where are your
yeah, like
people?
that's
Like, we're the people that are going to come in and sit at your table, and then we're going to leave to give you your space, and then we're going to come back when you need us to come back, and then we're going to
yeah.
leave to give you space. And it's like we're not always at your table, but we're always going to be
Well,
there if
there's
you need us.
always a
And that's,
chair open for you.
I love that. I love that. I think that that's kind of what we're accidentally doing, is building this community, because I feel like every person that we've had on, I'm like, oh, okay, you're my
Yeah.
people. All right. All right. I can reach out to you if I need to, but like, I respect your boundaries and I respect your peace and I respect your healing journey. But like, hey, also, I'm here if you ever need me. And that to me is better than the friendships that I've had to distance
Yeah.
myself
Oh,
from.
for sure.
feels more
Yeah, I found
fulfilling,
it
if that
funny,
makes
like, when I was gone, you had reached out about, like, "Hey, I'm, doing something. Can I get something from you?" And I told you, like, "Actually, I'm on a sabbatical, I'm out." And you were like, "Oh my god, I'm so happy for you." I had somebody else reach out, and I told them, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm out of the country." And they were like, "Oh my gosh, that sucks." And I was like, "Oh, it doesn't matter, you're not my people anyways." Like like, if you don't understand what I'm doing, like, it doesn't suck, it's actually really great, like, but cool, like, you can
right.
it yeah, sure, it does. It
You don't
sucks for
understand.
you, cool.
We're not on
Yeah.
the same
So,
page.
like, any
Yeah.
to have those reciprocal energies who are like, "Hey, that's your boundary, cool," or like, "Hey, you're working on this, awesome." Like, it's really
Yes. Love that
appreciated.
journey for
Yeah.
you. Literally. Okay, so I guess I've never had to close this out before. We'll put all of your links in our bio. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your energy. Thank you for your love. Thank you for what you're doing. I think it's not just your laughter that feels like a warm chocolate chip cookie. I'm like, this whole conversation felt like a warm chocolate chip
Well, I
cookie.
love that. That, like I said, that was the best compliment I could ever get, so to continue to get
Well,
those,
just
like, I'm
gratitude.
totally, totally fine with it. It's been an absolute
Yeah.
pleasure speaking to you, like, hopefully, maybe we can do this again with Christine or not, like, whenever things line up, they line up, but it's been wonderful.
Yes. You same to you. And to all of our listeners, we will see you guys on the other side. Don't hang
You
up
got
yet
it.
because I've got to just hit stop. Oh, dang.